Pittsburgh Steelers have hired Mike McCarthy to be the franchise's fourth head coach since 1969. And if you saw my video earlier of me out in the snowstorm talking about this hire, you know how I feel. If you haven't, I highly recommend that you spend 90 seconds and you go watch it. It is well worth it. My raw, instant reaction in the biggest snowstorm of the year, in all likelihood, to this tragic, tragic news. This is a complete and total organizational failure from top to bottom by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's what we're going to talk about today, just the process of this hire and how bad it truly is for the Steelers right now. And if you've watched this channel and you're a subscriber, first of all, thank you. We're closing in on 1K. Love all of you guys. The support's been crazy. But I've said in every single video since Mike Tomlin has stepped down, just 10 days ago at this point, that I was excited. I was excited and I felt incredibly refreshed because what this meant for the Steelers was that they had a chance to right all of their wrongs for the last decade. They had a true chance to say, hey, we're going to be different. We're going to take what we've done over the last decade and we're going to start fresh. We're going to get a new young guy and we're going to bring some new ideas in. It's going to be a brand new system. It's going to be a brand new brand of Steelers football. Every move that we made from here on out, I felt like I was going to look at it with a growth mindset and say, you know what, this is us building towards something. This is us. We're not in a really good position roster-wise, but we're going to build something here eventually. All of that is out the window. All of that is completely and totally out the window. With Mike McCarthy being hired as the next head coach, they have successfully hired another Mike Tomlin. And what I mean by that is they have successfully hired a guy that at this point in his career is not a ceiling raiser. I think Mike McCarthy is probably just as much, if not the same amount of a ceiling raiser as Mike Tomlin. What I mean when I say that is that I think Mike McCarthy can absolutely keep the standard going of, 9-10 wins every year and sneaking us into the playoffs just so we can keep the status quo of getting blown out in the first round. Actually, Mike McCarthy has a history of getting blown out in the first round. Hell, he had a hell of a time getting out of it in Dallas. Last playoff game Mike McCarthy coached, the Dallas Cowboys were the 2 seed. They hosted the Green Bay Packers, the 7 seed, and they lost by 35 points, I believe, in that one. Jordan Love's first year as a starter, get blown out by over 5 touchdowns at home. Doesn't that seem like the status quo for the Steelers the last decade or so? It's just uninspiring. It's nothing to get excited about. It just means more of the same. It really, really does. And it's honestly upsetting because, like I said, I've been looking forward to every move the Steelers are going to make. I really was excited to see who they hired and who they brought in as offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, all of it. I was so very excited to see all of it. And now I'm just incredibly deflated. First of all, we need to talk about the process that the Steelers took here. Their 10-day coaching search. Absolutely pathetic, by the way. Let's just look at the list of guys that they actually interviewed because it's very small. It is incredibly small. Mike McCarthy, they interviewed, obviously. Clay Kubiak, they requested him. They never actually got to interview him. He said, I want to go work for Kyle Shanahan for another year. Don't blame you. Don't blame you. Jeff Hafley, they had a virtual with. He obviously got hired by Miami. Elijah Avero, virtual interview. Jesse Minter requested him. I think they got a virtual interview with him. Certainly didn't get him in person. The Baltimore Ravens hired him, which is a significantly better hire than this Mike McCarthy one, by the way. Blows it out of the fucking water. Absolutely blows it. It would blow my mind if someone made a worse coaching hire than this one. I'm not joking, guys. The Arizona Cardinals are probably the worst opening available in this cycle. I think they will make a better head coaching hire than the Steelers made today. I truly think that in my heart of hearts. Anthony Weaver, they actually gave him 2 interviews. They gave him a virtual and then an in-person interview. So there's one person that we can actually say that the Steelers legitimately interviewed in person and actually gave a fair shot. All right. Brian Flores, another one, an easy connection, worked for the Steelers. We know they love those connections. Clearly, we learned that they value connections more than anybody ever should or does today. So they actually gave him an in-person and a virtual. So they actually somewhat considered him. Chris Shula, they did a virtual with him. In fact, I don't even think they got to do a virtual. I think they did, but they certainly didn't get to interview him in person. So did they give him a fair shake? I don't think you can say that. And then Nate Scheelhaus, got a virtual with him. Never, they're not going to get him in person, obviously. So their three choices were Anthony Weaver, Brian Flores, and Mike McCarthy. What does that mean? That means that they were so unbelievably blown away and impressed by whatever the hell Mike McCarthy said in that interview that they didn't even want to speak to Chris Shula or Nate Scheelhaus. They didn't have any interest in speaking to those guys. That is incredibly, I can't even put it into words. I'm more shocked because Chris Shula has been connected to the Steelers for well over a month. I feel like I talk about it every video ad nauseum. He was connected to the Steelers before Tomlin was even gone. And now they don't even give him an interview. How does that work? I would love to have been a fly on the wall for what exactly Mike McCarthy said in that interview to blow him away. I don't know what the hell he could have possibly said, but we do have some insight into what Mike McCarthy said in his interview. Now, one of the selling points, apparently, in Mike McCarthy's interview was that he is incredibly intrigued by the upside of Will Howard. and I know people love that. Guys, I don't think you understand how funny it is. The hope of our franchise at this current moment in time is hanging in the balance of the development of Will Howard and Mike McCarthy. Now, credit to Mike McCarthy. He has a playoff win more recently than Mike Tomlin. And I think that's funny when people say, hey, Mike McCarthy has he has a playoff win more recent than the Steelers. You're overreacting, Joey. Guys, there's a hilarious list of coaches that have a playoff win more recently than Mike Tomlin. You guys remember Mike Mularkey, the old Titans head coach way back when they had Marcus Mariota, but they were pretty uninspiring. They won the AFC South because it was so bad every year. Yeah, he has a playoff win more recently than Mike Tomlin. It doesn't take a lot to have a playoff win more recently than Mike Tomlin. It just means you have to win one in the last decade. It's uninspiring. Now, I will say this. What Mike McCarthy will be able to do is, in theory, the Steelers' offense should be the best it has been in close to a decade, I'd argue. At least it should be the best it's been since 2016. 2017, they were really good as well. 2018, they took a little bit, they were really good. 2019 is where it started to go downhill. So you're going to see an improved Steelers offense in theory because, like Jack and I talked about, Mike McCarthy, if nothing else, he raises the floor of your offense. He had, obviously, prime Aaron Rodgers. That always looked good. Consistently had a top 10 offense. Had a couple of seasons in Dallas where they were the best offense in the entire league. His last year in Dallas, CeeDee Lamb was hurt a lot of the year. They dropped in efficiency, but he really is good at coaching offense. I guess that's what's different about this hire. It is an offensive-minded guy. So if your only selling point in the hiring process, if the only thing you wanted, if you were a fan, is, man, I really want an offensive-minded guy, I guess congratulations to you because you got your guy. You got your offensive-minded guy. So congratulations. But it's just hard to imagine that a guy who's going to be 63 years old in a couple of months is really in it for the long run with the Steelers. They're banking everything they have on this guy being able to win and win now. That's where I think the biggest disconnect is here. It is abundantly clear that Art Rooney, Omar Khan, and Andy Weidel have a completely different view on this roster and where this team is at than just about anybody else. There are some people who are very happy about this hire. I will never be one of those people. I won't backtrack. I won't say that I won't even try to pretend if Mike McCarthy goes and wins a Super Bowl. I won't pretend like I, was jumping for joy when they hired him and I expected this. But let's be serious for 3 seconds, guys. Right now, we're relying on the development of Will Howard, the idea of Aaron Rodgers coming back, which we'll get into, and Mike McCarthy. That is what our franchise, that's what the balance hangs in. We can talk about Aaron Rodgers coming back a little bit. If there's anybody that Aaron Rodgers is going to want to come back and play for, it's Mike McCarthy. I guess that's a good thing. No. What am I even saying? What am I saying, guys? It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Why would we want Aaron Rodgers back? Keep in mind, I think Aaron Rodgers is awesome. I think he was phenomenal for the Steelers last year. I think he was perfect for them. If he comes back, it's just going to be the same thing. I don't know how we can actually sit here and think it's going to be different this time. I think the difference was we didn't have an offensive-minded Mike McCarthy, and that was the difference. We needed to get rid of Mike Tomlin, and we need to go out and hire Mike McCarthy. who, I mean, let's be honest, guys, those teams in Dallas, their issue was the defense was always kind of eh. They had that really good Deron Bland season, but that was always the downfall of those teams. Like I said, they give up 40 some points in a playoff game. That's about status quo for the Steelers. And they were the most penalized team in the NFL several years running during his tenure in Dallas. Incredibly undisciplined. He does inherit an older roster in Pittsburgh that we know, especially on the, defensive line. They have a lot of veterans there. Obviously, Watt, Hayward. I'm interested to see how the players react to this. I really, really am. Obviously, they're not going to come out and say, we didn't want Mike McCarthy. We're mad. We don't like Mike McCarthy. They're going to be like, oh, this is the best hire. This is great. Omar knows what he's doing. Art Rooney's the best. He knows what he's doing too. No, they don't. No, they don't. You don't need to sit there and lie to us, guys. I do wish that players would be more honest about this stuff, but I completely understand why they can't. They're media trained. They have to, toe the company line. They're getting paid millions and millions of dollars. Doesn't really matter to them at the end of the day. But it's just a largely uninspiring hire. It is perfectly Pittsburgh Steelers. It is perfectly stay in the mushy middle. Aaron Rodgers coming back would be a terrible thing. You know what it does do? It does mean that the Steelers are going to have to do this kind of dance this offseason. I can guarantee you that they're going to be on their knees begging for Aaron Rodgers to come back. Mike McCarthy, and they're gonna be like, please, Aaron, please, we really need you. We really want you to come back. Please, Aaron, will you please bless us with your presence for another year? Will you please get us 9 wins, and perhaps if everybody else gets hurt and injured, we'll win the division and we'll get bounced in the first round. Please, will you do it for one more year, Aaron? Please. That's what they're going to do the entire offseason. That's why I can't get excited about anything they do. Even if they make a move and trade up in the first round, it won't be for a quarterback, because the only one worth drafting in the first round is Fernando Mendoza, and they're not touching him. It's just, I will say, Mike McCarthy has had some great quarterbacks whenever he played, obviously. But if he's even excited about the development of Will Howard, which it's widely reported he is, I don't even know when you throw Will Howard in. Do you actually think that the Steelers will hire a head coach based off his enthusiasm for Will Howard? Do you think that that's a good idea? Because if you think that's a good idea, I don't understand how you put your faith in that. I don't understand how much faith you could possibly put into a 6th-round pick who we've never seen play a snap in even any NFL preseason action. They're going to absolutely bring somebody in. I wouldn't be shocked if it's Aaron Rodgers at this point. They are perfectly placed to stay in the middle once again, and therein lies the issue. I should have known. I should have read more into it. Whenever Art Rooney said in his press conference after Tomlin stepped down that if they don't have to waste a year, tanking, why would they do that? They're going to compete year one if they do. That should have been our sign, guys. That should have been our sign. How did they only interview three candidates? I don't understand it. I know I said it in the video that I posted earlier. Chris Shula and Nate Schulhouse, they very well going to win the Super Bowl this year. The Steelers could not have waited for Mike McCarthy. Why did they wait? Nobody else even wanted to interview Mike McCarthy. He got an interview with the Titans. They already hired Robert Saleh, which kicks the shit out of this hire. Kicks the absolute dog piss out of this hire. I'm struggling for the words. Did the Steelers actually think that Mike McCarthy was going to get poached by some other team? Did they think that Mike McCarthy was actually going to blow anybody away, like the way he blew them away? And this just furthers the idea or the conspiracy that the Steelers are way too obsessed with tradition and family and connections and things like that. Not that connections are bad, but these kind of connections that the Steelers really enjoy are kind of funny. It's actually comical at this point. You know how the Steelers have more sets of, brothers than anybody in the NFL? Not brothers, but like family members. Like it was just weird at a point. We had 2 Herbigs, we had 2 Haywards, we had another set of brothers. The names are eluding me, but we had another set of brothers on the team. We had Terrell Edmonds and his brother at the center, Trey Edmonds. That's who I'm thinking of. There was another, I'm pretty sure. But point being, the Steelers actually like to draft, people who used to play for the team and stuff like that. And I always kind of attributed that to Mike Tomlin. And I will apologize to Mike Tomlin in the fact that now I see maybe I'm sure he didn't oppose it, but I don't think it was him that was like, "Hey, I really like this guy because he's a family friend." That was very much Art Rooney. I think that was all Art Rooney, valuing tradition and valuing family to a fault, truly to a fault. Because the connection I'm making here is Mike McCarthy is from Pittsburgh. Do we actually think that if Mike McCarthy was from Tampa Bay, Florida, that the Steelers would have hired him? Do we think they would have? Do we think that they would have been blown away by a guy who's been fired twice in the last 6 seasons as a head coach? Do we think that they would have been inspired by the guy who has one playoff win since 2017? Granted, that's more than Mike Tomlin, but we went over this. That's not impressive to have more playoff wins than Mike Tomlin. It just kind of toes the line. Do we think that for 1 second they didn't look at this guy and they're like, damn, he grew up rooting for the Steelers? If you're from Pittsburgh, if you're living in Pittsburgh right now, you have a better shot of getting the Steelers head coaching job just based off the fact of where you're from, based off where your geographical location makes you a better candidate for the Steelers head coaching position per Art Rooney. Since Art Rooney has taken over this football team in 2017, it's been nothing but a disaster. It really, truly has. No playoff wins since he's been an owner. His legacy right now is giving the locker room a fresh coat of paint. That's what Art Rooney's legacy is. And hiring Mike McCarthy. What a legacy indeed, Art. It's shameful. It really, really is. Somebody asked me on my last mailbag, how close are we to sell the team chance? I did downplay that. I was like, I think we're still a pretty good ways away from that, because I did think that they were actually going to make the correct hire. I thought that they were going to bring in someone young and I would give them a fair chance. And to be clear, guys, I said no matter who they hire, I'm going to give them a fair chance. I'm going to give Mike McCarthy a fair chance. I'm not going to go in and say, yeah, this guy actually sucks, whatever. Although I firmly believe that he does, and this will blow up in their faces in my heart of hearts. This will blow up in the Pittsburgh Steelers' faces. I'm still going to look at what Mike McCarthy does. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to observe. Obviously, everything needs a reaction. Everything he does is going to be reacted to by myself, and I think it's completely warranted. But I am going to say, you know what? Let's see what Mike McCarthy cooks up. Even though I think it is going to be so gross and so appalling to the eyes, it's not going to be much fun. It's just not going to be much fun. They hired him based off the fact that he's from Pittsburgh. They really did. I don't know what he could have possibly done in that one in-person interview to make them think that they needed to jump on him. Nobody was going to hire him. I can promise you that nobody was going to hire Mike McCarthy. He is a Steelers fan. He went on the Pat McAfee show in December, and they were like, what's your Christmas wish? He said a Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl. This guy is a Steelers fan. Therefore, he is, more qualified for the job. It makes him want it more, right? That's all that matters, is that he's from Pittsburgh and he cares about the team. He really likes the team. Art, I really, really like the team. I grew up rooting for them. Art Rooney's probably like, holy shit, this guy's from Pittsburgh. You're from Pittsburgh? You're hired, buddy. You are hired. And Omar Khan, I'm very disappointed in him. I'm incredibly disappointed in him. I know that we said that we don't necessarily trust Omar Khan to make the right hire or the right moves as far as draft picks go or anything like that. Although Omar Khan's had some pretty decent drafts since he's, been the general manager of the Steelers. I'm very disappointed in him. I don't know how he signed off on this. I don't know how this happened. If they hired him based off the fact that he's from Pittsburgh, which I think you're lying to yourself if you think that didn't play a little bit into it. I tweeted out that Art 2 and Omar have not learned from the atrocities that occurred in the first round of the 2022 draft. And of course, the replies are saying, oh, Joey, Omar Khan didn't draft in 2022. It was Colbert. I know it wasn't Omar Khan that drafted in 2022, but Omar Khan was still next in line. If you think he didn't have a little bit of say, I have some news for you. Also, Omar Khan is smart enough to sit in that room, see what happened, see that process, and say, I think we value guys that are right down the hall, right down the street from us. We value those guys maybe a little bit too much. It's clear that I don't think he sees it like that. They see this as a home run hire. And it's very clear now that those reports earlier in the week from Pelissero and Rappaport and Schefter that Mike McCarthy had a legitimate shot to get this job, they were all true. It wasn't Mike McCarthy, pushing some insiders to put out some information on him and make him look more desirable to these, jobs that he's interviewing for, because he didn't have any other interview except for the Titans one. And they said, "Nah, we're good. We're going to hire Robert Saleh. We're good," because there's so much better options out there. And there are. Like I said, I don't know anybody that's going to make a worse hire than this. I really don't. This will be the worst hire that anybody makes of the cycle. And it does kind of make me wonder if Shula and Schillhouse did want this job, which I think they both did. I think it's fair to say they were both interested in this. Did they want too much change? The Steelers, obviously, they don't have a passing game coordinator. They don't have much of an analytics department to speak of. And teams like the Rams are built very heavily on that stuff. They have much more of a staff than the Steelers do, and they have much more of an analytical approach than the Steelers do. Mike McCarthy is an analytical guy, though. I will give him that. So I expect the Steelers' offense to be a lot more lively, go for it on more fourth downs, maybe make some better decisions offensively. I think the offense will look a lot better with Mike McCarthy, but I'm still not excited about it whatsoever. But I wonder if in those virtual interviews, Schillhouse and Shula said something to that effect, and the Steelers just, they weren't interested in that. They kind of said, yeah, we're good. Mike McCarthy's fine with what we have, which I'm sure Mike McCarthy was just on his knees begging for the job because it's his hometown team and he wants another, attempt to coach. Like I said, going to be 63 in a couple of months. So if you want any silver lining, they're putting a lot in him to develop the next quarterback, which, he does have some history developing quarterbacks all the way back with Joe Montana. He helped develop Joe Montana under Marty Schottenheimer all the way back when. Isn't that hard to believe? He did help. He did have a hand in developing him. Dak Prescott had the best years of his career under Mike McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers had the best years of his career under Mike McCarthy. Will Howard up next, right, guys? Right? They're going to bring back Rodgers, probably. That's my guess right now as I sit here at this very moment. It's going to be pathetic. They're going to beg on their knees for months, and Rodgers will decide he's going to come out and play for one more year in July. And then maybe they're going to try to take a guy in the 2027 draft. But it's going to have to all happen very, very quickly. Because how long can Mike McCarthy realistically be the head coach of this team? Is McCarthy somebody who can be the head coach of this team for 19 years like the Steelers are used to seeing their head coaches be? No. This breaks every precedent possible. Mike Tomlin, Bill Cowher, and Chuck Noll were 34, 34, and 37 years of age, respectively, when they were hired as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Basically half of what Mike McCarthy is. Mike McCarthy's also obviously an offensive guy. I like that they took that approach, but man, this is the worst possible way to go about it. like truly, it just is. And it's also been reported that the Browns, they're very interested in Schillhouse. He's considered one of the favorites to get that job. The Cleveland Browns are going to make a much better hire than the Steelers. Let's assume they hire Nate Schillhouse as their next head coach. If you wanted a measuring stick for just how big of a disaster this hire is for the Steelers, look no further than what the Cleveland Browns are doing. Look no further. They're going to make a better, more long-term approach than the Pittsburgh Steelers are. The Steelers back themselves into another window where it seems impossible. And man, I know they have an older roster. I guess they have some guys in place. They're going to try to win some this year. It's going to be to the same effect of absolutely nothing. One of the final points I want to make on our brave new head coach, Mike McCarthy, as we close out this video here, comes in from Evan Abrams over on Twitter. Phenomenal tweet here that I found incredibly interesting. Mike McCarthy is incredibly good. He crushes bad teams, and he's mediocre versus the best. Toes the line, doesn't it? Versus teams 500 or worse in his career as a head coach, Mike McCarthy is 114, 46, and 1. He is 95, 63, and 3 against the spread. Very good win percentage. Absolutely beats the shit out of the teams that he should. Now, versus teams above 500 in his career, 60 wins, 70 losses, 1 tie. What does that scream? It screams mediocrity. It screams mushy middle. It screams rinse and repeat. It is the same shit and a different year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is a new era of Steelers football, but make no mistake, it is largely going to be the same story. I couldn't be more disappointed in the process. Guys, there's going to be so much more content coming out in the next week. I'm heading down to Mobile for the Senior Bowl, so you're going to get a ton of draft content over the next week. You're going to get so many reactions. You're going to get your reactions. If you follow me over on Instagram, go send a message in my broadcast channel. Get your question answered on Mike McCarthy. Send me a video, DM me a video or voice memo of your honest reaction to Mike McCarthy being hired for a chance to be featured in a video coming out later in the week. Couldn't be more excited for the content that's going to come out, because if nothing else, this is very good for content. This is a great content hire. Steelers content creators are absolutely fired up at Mike McCarthy being hired. I want this team to win. I want them to be good. I want to be able to cover a team that's good and wins. I care about this team, and they don't see it the same way. I love all you guys. I appreciate you watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys soon.